At james.crid.land and in your favourite podcast app, I'm James Cridland, the radio futurologist. This week we can all learn from European radio. In a few weeks, I'll be at Radio Days Europe, the meeting place for radio. It'll be happening in Vienna, in Austria, home of lots of beautiful old buildings and some quite forward-thinking radio stations, including the excellently jingled Corona hit. Listen to this. Wow. Now, last year I saw lots of interesting speakers. One of the things that I enjoy about seeing Radio Days Europe is that you get to hear not just from English-speaking radio, which is relatively easy to research online, but also from radio stations across Europe too and the world. Sebastian Fitzek is a best-selling international author writing films and books, but he also works for 104.6 RTL, a music station in Berlin in Germany. He talked at Radio Days Europe last March in Amsterdam about how a great radio presenter has a pair of glasses, virtual glasses, through which they see the world. Any great radio presenter, he said, has their own viewpoint and experience with which they can approach any subject. And when you hear them talk about something, it should be really clear what their experience is. Now, often management shy away from wanting personal feelings as part of a news interview, but those virtual glasses, he says, are useful to learn more about the world, and they're an asset, not a liability. I listened to Naja Nielsen from Danish radio. She said that social media is very big. In Denmark, 73% of people aged under 30 get most of their news from social media, but many don't realise that they also get it from radio too. Her key message last year was that we need to make news programmes that people love and actively consume, rather than things that people don't enjoy and just exist because we think we have to do them. They have a 3-hour news show on their youth station in Denmark, which is one of the most popular shows on the station. It's hosted by young presenters with great thoughts and views on the issues of the day, and done in a way that appeals to people as entertainment. When we think about the future of news, she said, we have to find new solutions to the needs people have. People want trustworthy news. They want to learn. They want facts. But they might want this in a different way to how it's been done in the past. Manoush Zomorodi from WNYC in New York spoke about something she called the virtuous cycle of content. When you cover a story or a feature, she said, ask your audience about it, ask them to help you with it. And this leads to a better piece of radio with more voices from your audience, which leads to other people getting in touch, which leads to even better radio. She said that great radio starts with a conversation with your audience, and you then end up with a feedback loop of astonishingly great content. You change from having 1 or 2 people working on a show to having literally thousands. Meaningful interaction, rather than what's your favourite biscuit, is great for the radio. And Ulrich Hagerup also spoke. He's the news director of Danish radio, and he spoke at Radio Days Europe in Paris in 2016 about how news is often depressing and sad. He said many journalists focus on bad stories, and he worries that news has turned into drama, conflict and negativity. He asked if it's harder to get positive news. That doesn't mean that the desire of saying something positive should get in the way of the facts, but it does mean, he said, that we should be open to the idea of saying something positive and frame our questions in a way that leads to positive, constructive answers. It strikes me that right now, great radio can benefit not just by focusing on the bad, but also mentioning the good in every story. There always is some, if you look hard enough. I'm very much looking forward to being at Radio Days Europe this year. I'm talking about podcasting and hosting a few sessions about the Norwegian switchover from FM to DAB. So drop me a line if you're there too and you fancy catching up. I'll also, of course, be collecting more of these exciting European jingles. What a racket! My weekly newsletter is at james.crid.land and daily podcast news at podnews.net. And until next time, keep listening.